In this video, I'm going to show you how to create this symmetrical floral pattern in Procreate on the iPad. Hello, my name is Mel Armstrong and I'm an illustrator and surface pattern designer from Wellington, New Zealand. And on this channel, I bring you tutorials and tips and tricks for surface pattern designers, children's book illustrators, and creative business people who just want to learn and create and do the things that they're passionate about and earn some money at the same time. Okay, let's jump into the tutorial. To start, let's create a new document. I'm going to create a 3000 by 3000 pixels. I've got one set up here already, or you can click on the plus sign and then the little plus sign here with the folder, and then you can type in the dimensions. So 3000 by 3000, and then DPI I will leave at 300. And then I'm going to grab one of my templates. So I'm going to go to the Procreate library. I'm just going to pinch that and then go to my personal libraries, and I have my template library. You can follow the link in the description below to purchase this, but I am going to use this one here called the Peacock, and I'm going to tap that in, then hit the selection tool there and say fit to canvas. And then I am going to reduce the opacity and change the blending mode to multiply, and then I'll lock that. So basically this is just going to be a guide, so I want to keep everything within the outline there. You don't have to use this, you could create one, you just might end up with things going over and it might not work as well, but you can do that. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I've just popped it below the template layer. I'm also going to turn on symmetry because I want this to be a symmetrical flower. So I'm going to go to the tools and then go to canvas and then drawing guide and then edit drawing guide. Click on symmetry and it will default to the one that I want. You get a few options here. I want the vertical, so anything I draw on this side will appear on the other side in mirror. But you can also do horizontal, quadrant and radial, which are really fun to play with. So I'm just going to click the tick there to confirm that. And then now when we draw, whoops, we don't want that one. Let's go back to the Procreate library. Now when you draw, you can see it will mirror it on the other side. So I'm just going to draw a flower. So I'm going to draw a line down the middle. I'm going to go all the way down. Actually might do the whole way, so I think I'm going to join them all up. So I'm just going to draw a line all the way down the middle, and then if I hold it, it will straighten up, and then if I tap on there, it'll do a perfect line for me. And then I'm going to draw a flower here. I'm just going to sketch this out. Like that. And then we can probably remove this bit in the middle, as we don't need it. And then let's just do a centerpiece. This is very rough. And then let's draw some leaves up here. You just want to make sure that they stay in this kind of shape and don't go over if you're using the template. I'm going to do that again. I've decided I want to branch this one out a bit. Okay, the next thing I want to do is just check that this is going to work in a repeat pattern. I like to do this before I move on to colour, as it's much easier to change the sketch than it is to change the colour. So I'm just going to turn off the template. I'm going to duplicate this one and turn off the original just for the moment. And then with this new one, I'm going to put a mark in the top right and top left, bottom left. And I've got the symmetry on, so it's just going to put them in all four corners, but that's fine. And then duplicate that. 4 times. Make sure that the snapping is on. You've got magnetics and snapping, and the distance and velocity are at the max. And then drag it up until it snaps, and you'll get that yellow line across the top and the middle, and then drag it across till you get the line down and in the middle. And then I will do that for each of the duplicates. And then merge those together. So I'm just going to grab them all and pinch them, and that will merge them, and then remove those marks, and then we can turn the original back on. So this is when we want to have a look and see if anything's overlapping. So this leaf here I think is a little bit too close to the stalk, so I think I'm going to just fix that up a bit. I'm just going to make sure I'm on that right layer, and then maybe just erase that a bit and fix it up so it's not so close to the stalk. And then that will replicate when we do the repeat down there. So I don't need to test it again. I know it's going to look nice down there. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of those outer edges and then use this as our sketch. So I'm going to turn that to multiply, blending mode, and lower the opacity. Create another layer below, and then start painting. Now every time you create a new layer, you have to turn on the drawing assist. So if I just click on it and then turn on drawing assist, it will turn that back on for me. Now before I start colouring, I'm going to show you how to create a colour palette based on one colour that you like. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the Coolers app, where you can go to their website. So in here you can just generate colour palettes like this, but what I like to do is find a colour that I really like, which I like this one in the middle here. So what I could do is lock that one and then hit the generate button, and it will produce some nice colours to match it. Another thing you can do, if you have the Pro version of Coolers, you can go into the options here and then go to generate method, and I like to use the monochromatic, but you can also choose between these other sort of colour wheel methods that will then generate complementary or split complementary colours, which will make your palette really balanced. So let's try the monochromatic. And so now it's just going to give me a bunch of similar colours but in different tones. And then maybe let's try the split complementary. And that's pretty cool as well. Quite liking that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this palette to Procreate. And then what I'll do is just open it up in Procreate, and it generally puts them right down the bottom. So there it is there. So that's a really cool way to get a color palette into Procreate. And I will start using that. I'm going to start with the Mine brush, which is actually from the classic library, but I've copied it across because I use it a lot. So I've copied it across to the new Procreate library, which has a bunch of new brushes created by Kyle Webster, which are really cool. So if you want to look for them online, just go to the classic library and go to calligraphy, and it's there. Okay, I am going to start with this turquoise colour, and I'm using the monoline brush. I'm going to draw a straight line down the middle to do this main branch, and then if we snap it and tap it, it will go directly like a vertical line that will match up at both ends. And then I will just reduce the size of that for these other branches. It'll be a little bit bigger. And then to fill them, I'm just going to drag in the colour and then hit the continue filling, and then I just need to tap in each one like that. And then another little trick I like to do is, if I want a bit of texture to it, what I do is turn on the alpha lock, And then I'm just going to turn off that sketch layer so you can see better. And then I'm going to fill it with a white. So if I just go to the classic here and drag it up, I might just add that to my palette so it's there. And then go back and fill a layer. Now you can't see it, but I'm going to grab that color again, and then I'm going to go to the new Procreate library, and I'm going to go to the charcoals, and I'm going to use this one here called Nut Grove. So then I will create a layer on top and clip it to that layer there. Now if you want to be able to see that, you could put a background color. So maybe I'll put that light blue, so that just makes it a little bit easier to see. And then on that new layer, I'm going to turn on the assist, and then with my Nut Grove texture brush, I can then color it in and see now it's got this lovely texture. And with this one, the harder I push, the more, the less you'll see the texture. So I'm just brushing really lightly to get this lovely sort of grungy texture on the leaf. Like that. So if I zoom in, you can see it's got this lovely texture on it, which I prefer to the flat color. And then I might go a little bit further with this. I'm going to create another layer on top and then clip it, and then turn on the drawing assist. And then I'm going to grab the light blue again. I'm actually going to change that background color to a lighter color, just so we can see this new color. And then I'm going to add some little highlights to my leaves. So let's maybe change it to a different brush, maybe the Florentine, which is a bit thinner. And what I'm doing is I'm just going to do half of the leaf. This kind of creates a almost 3D effect, so it makes the leaf look more 3D. You could do whatever you like. I always like to do some sort of detail on there. Okay, and then I might just do, let's just lower that, just some little marks like this. Okay, let's move on to the flower. So I'm just going to group those together. So to group them, I'm just selecting them each by swiping to the right to select each layer and then clicking on group. And then let's create another layer and turn on the drawing assist and just bring back the sketch. And then I'm going to go with the yellow. It's kind of a greeny yellow. And then I am going to grab my model line and draw out this flower. And then fill that in. And then I'm going to change that to white. So I'm going to turn on the alpha lock, select white. Now you could do this in white initially if you've got a different color background, but generally I start with a white background, so I can't see what I'm doing if I'm drawing in white, so that's why I do the color first and then just revert it to white, but it doesn't matter which order. So let's fill that, create another layer above, and let's use that Nut Grove again, and I might leave the symmetry off and just draw it like this. And then I'm going to create another layer on top and select maybe the purple to do the center, and I'm not using the symmetry for this one either. I just want to draw it without making it too perfect. And then let's full lock that one and fill it with white. And then we don't need to clip that one, so I'll clip the one above and then use the purple to fill it. And then I might actually do another one as well. And this one can just be that creamy color. And then I want to add some detail to the leaves. So I'm going to add another layer above, to the petals I mean, and then I'm going to keep that creamy colour that I've currently got and use this Paleon, which is in the pencils library. So I am going to also turn on the drawing assist for this one, and then I'm just going to draw some details on here. When I do this, I like to always do the center one first and then the outer edges, and then maybe do some in the middle of those. Okay, let's turn off the sketch layer, and I'm going to group the flower together. And let's create the repeat. So I'm going to turn off the background layer, use 3 fingers to swipe down, copy all, 3 fingers to swipe down and paste, and that will paste a merged layer. So if we go in here, it's merged everything that it can see into one layer. So what I'll do is group that initial original flower layer. We can turn on the background again to make it easier to see. And then with this merged one, I want to just make some marks in the top right and the bottom left. And the reason for doing this is that I want to, when I select it, I want the whole canvas to be selected. So you can see here the soldiering ants, you can see them have right around the edge, but if I undo that and take away those marks and I do it, then it doesn't go right to the edge, it just selects that motif. So we want those marks there to select the entire thing, otherwise you're not going to get a nice repeat. So with that selected, I'm going to duplicate that so I have 4 copies, and then we're going to move them into the 4 corners. So make sure your snapping is on with the magnetics, and the distance and velocity need to be at the max. And then if we just drag it up till it snaps, and we can see the orange line at the top and then the orange line in the middle there, and then drag it across to the left. You can see those orange lines. Sometimes this can be really tricky and you might have to start again. If it keeps jumping around, just undo it, start again and give it a go. When you're first doing this, it's really can be quite difficult. I'm hoping at some point Procreate will make it a lot easier for us, but it just takes a little bit of practice. So now the next one is going to go into the right top corner. And then let's do the bottom ones. Okay, now let's merge those 4 together and then remove the marks in the middle. So that is now our repeating tile. So what I'll do to test this is let's create a copy of all of that, but I'm just going to turn off the drawing guide so that we don't see the line down the middle. And let's copy all again and paste. And then we'll duplicate that one 4 times. So we've got 4 copies there, and I'm just going to group the original one there and turn it off, and then select one of these, and this time we're going to reduce the size down to 1/4 of the canvas, which in this case is 1500 by 1500 pixels, and then do that for each of the quadrants. And there you can see everything is lining up nice. We want to look where the repeat is, and I can't see any lines, so it looks like I got everything in the right place and it's repeating perfectly. Another thing I sometimes like to do is add some texture on top. So I am going to add another layer and then go to my template library, and I do have a linen texture here that is 3000 by 3000, and it's a repeating texture. It's already been created to repeat nicely. So I'm just going to tap that on there. Just make sure, sometimes if it doesn't go in the right place or it's too big for the canvas, you just need to reduce it down a bit and then tap it in and then fit it to the canvas. And then if I reduce this opacity of that and maybe change the blending mode that you use is going to differ for what sort of colors you already have in your pattern. So generally I use a multiply or a light color or overlay. And that just creates a very subtle texture, linen texture to your design. Okay, that is it. To export, you just want to go to the wrench tool and then go to share. And you can either share as a PSD if you want to work on this in Photoshop, or a JPEG or a PNG. So I typically work in Photoshop to finish things off, but this one's pretty much already done. So I am going to export this as a JPEG and then airdrop it to my computer. And you also, just to note, you have two scales here. You've got this scale, you've also got the larger scale. So both of these are repeating tiles. One's just the smaller scale, one's a large scale. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's a quick, easy one, quite effective, and you can use those files to create fabric at Spoonflower or even wallpaper. And if you want to create another fun, easy Procreate repeating pattern, I suggest you check out this video here.